the problems that everyone is facing, right? They are at every level. So I think when you think about your organization, when you think about the challenges that you're facing, they are systemic. And so you have an entire community everywhere around you to help you work through those. So what a great start. Another round of applause for the mayor, please. That was really wonderful to be able to hear that firsthand. I know that it gives a little bit of a collective sigh when I think about at least US politics. So this is inspiring to think that is what we need more of. So now I have the pleasure of welcoming to the stage Nicole Moreo of LinkedIn, and she is going to be talking about data. She is going to be talking about all of the elements that so many of you spend your time on and trying to provide insights for your teams. Specifically, brand, dwell time, and marketing and sales orchestration, aligning the best practices with the new metrics. So welcome to the stage, Nicole, and thank you all for giving her the time and attention during this session.
Hi, everyone. So normally I feel like I'm at conferences and they put me after someone talking about a really cool David Beckham campaign or Ryan Reynolds or something. Now I go after a mayor. So, this is good. But we have a short amount of time today to talk about 3 topics that I am very, anyone here has probably heard me soapbox about a little bit. So I'm going to talk more about the mindset that we're thinking through. So just for a little background. The Insights team at LinkedIn, so I oversee for North America, we're part of the customer science team. What is that? We're constantly looking at our first party data, our platform data, and how can we be giving best recommendations when it comes to B2B marketing. So it's made up of content specialists, insights, we have measurement and application specialists, we have our think tank, the B2B Institute. And so these 3 topics I'm going through today are things we have been exploring over the past couple of years, things that we've been digging into and really trying to think about. So we're going to be thinking about mindset as we go through today. If anybody has heard me speak before, you've seen the slide. Our job as communicators or marketers is to really make sure we're reaching the right people via the right channels with the right messages at the right time to achieve a specific goal. We actually even heard the mayor just say about this as well. I used to follow this up with trying to make the point of there's data behind each of these, and still too often we only pick one KPI, or we pick one message that we want to be looking at, or one data point, one data stream. What we started thinking about at LinkedIn, and what's been really kind of our journey, is thinking more about signals. What are the signals that we're thinking through? What are the signals for optimization? What are the signals for intent? Whether that's purchase, is that a merger? Is that hiring? What are these higher business problems, bigger business problems that we're looking to solve that we really need to be thinking about? And as we started thinking about these signals, it occurred to me, since COVID, we've had a lot. There's COVID, there's massive political issues, there's racial issues, there's geopolitical issues, right? More and more, I've seen study after study and report come out that's saying, finally, communicators have a seat at the table. I've been speaking to CMOs, CFOs, they classify the CCO as the advisor. And so this is true. We've gotten a bigger seat at the table as an advisor, but we have not gotten a bigger budget for the most part, right? So I started trying to think about why. We're struggling to show the impact of these bigger business problems. So at LinkedIn, we have like an economic graph because we have a digital representation of the global workforce. And so we started asking ourselves, if we truly want to start solving bigger business problems, what signals do we have that we can start interpreting, start thinking about differently? So we have member data. That's real-time talent market, how they're interacting. We have company data. We have skills. There's more skills coming in every single day. Schools, jobs, that's 5 million plus updates per minute. Every one of these can be a signal for a bigger business impact. Why are we not using them? Why are we kind of sticking with the typical KPI metrics of how many people engage with something or what eyeballs there are to a piece of content? So we started evaluating. We have 3 altitudes when it comes to different signals. We have societal, we have industry, and we have marketing. How can we start using these to really bring forward the story? And so we started trying to ask ourselves, what do we kind of base ourselves in? right? If we're thinking about the power, and especially at LinkedIn, we're B2B focused, right? So if we're thinking of power of B2B marketing, it's really in brand. That's where our big focus is. And through our think tank and partnerships we have some academics, we really ground ourselves in something called the 95-5 rule. How many people have heard of the 95-5 rule? We got a few, right? It started in the academic world. It's something that we've been bringing to life. Now, if you're thinking about what is this, if you think about the typical marketing funnel, we've put it on its side, and we're now calling it the cash flow funnel. Why are we doing this? In order to get an understanding from the C-suite, we have to speak the language of the CFO, right? So if we want to put ourselves in the mindset of the CFO and the CMO, we need to think a little differently. So if we're looking at this cash flow funnel, the CFO, they value companies on a cash flow basis, and a majority of value is the ability to generate future cash flow, right? A company's value is based on their ability to create future cash flow. A marketer and communicator, we're all focused on customer. The 95-5 rule is telling us that majority of our customers are future customers. So if we're speaking that language of the CFO, the future customers drive future cash flow, right? So if we're now thinking about this, I have a customer who kept coming to us saying, I only want to target my target audience. It's tech buyers. Here's the list of job titles I want to go at. We kept trying to explain to them, one, the buying committee for your product is large. On average, it's 10 plus people. That's 10 plus different job titles. So we need to be looking at those. Plus, we started doing some analysis. The job titles that they were looking at, their target audience, they were changing jobs and titles every 6 months. So if they're only targeting that in-the-moment person, that 5% that's in market, you're missing out, right? So when we did the analysis, we actually found out that the current buying group before that, what were they before they were in their current buying group, their current job? They all were in consultancies. They didn't have the typical job titles. So they had been so focused on the people in market, they're spending their entire budget on 5% of audience that was maybe willing to buy at that moment, and they're not getting that full 5%, they're getting a portion that was on their consideration list. So 80% of budgets are still focused on that bottom funnel, that in that moment, when in reality 95% of that audience isn't there, and you're wasting 80% of your budget on that. It's also the easiest place to measure if we're thinking about that. So as we're thinking through what does this mean for us, we have to remind ourselves that buyers put themselves in the market, not marketers. It's a situational moment. It's something that we need to think about because it's not about what they're thinking. It's about when they are thinking about it. So some of the research that we've been doing are category entry points, journey entry points, things that we've all been talking about for a while, but we have some specific research on category entry points. And so what we started thinking are, what are those cues? What is the awareness? What's the situational context that brings them in, right? That's what we need to be thinking about. What are the signals that we can start interpreting so that we understand when they are ready and we can start creating content for that? But as you're doing this, if it's about when, it's also then about mental availability. So this is something that we've been digging into quite a bit. Again, recommend taking a look at the LinkedIn Collective and our B2B Institute for some of this research. But as we're digging into the mental availability, it's really about being remembered, right? Win the mind, win the market. That is the way to do that. So when we started trying to think, I've been saying this for years, if someone's ready to buy and you're not even on their consideration list, you're never going to be on their consideration list. You have to be top of mind for them before they start making that final list. Otherwise, you'll never be ready. So we knew this. We have some research that's showing this. We're getting a lot of head nods. People are on the same page. Great. But what do we do? How do we actually start bringing this to life? So we developed a lot of interesting lines on here, but we developed something called the CMO scorecard. So that's creative media outcomes. Why did we start doing this? Well, we started looking at a bunch of signals, right? We started trying to ask ourselves, if mental availability is critical, how can we start finding those signals that we can all evaluate on a regular basis? How can we find those signals that allow us to optimize, make plans, make our strategy? And as we started digging, and we had partners like Nielsen and a few others, and using our first-party data, we started really seeing that as we took the inputs of media and creative, that's where we started seeing an impact. Creative is the biggest edge opportunity in B2B. Effective creative drives 10 to 20 times more sales. But again, we are not talking about it. It is not something that people are focusing on. When we started doing an audit through the CMO scorecard, a majority of people out there have really, really low performing content. If you take a look at the paper that we have on the CMO scorecard, you'll see some of our research partners did quite a bit of work on this, and it's very low performing content. People don't remember it, they don't recall it, but they're spending a lot of money on it, a lot of money creating more and more and more content, but it's really not creating a difference. So how do we start shifting this? Because the CMO scorecard, we really started like, how do we quantify the value that brand creates amongst the 95% of that out-of-market audience? And we're gonna do that by starting to link creative and media to business outcomes. So what's really funny is we have a chart, and if you look at any demand content or activation content, which is where most people are spending their money, that 80% of the budget we were talking about, over time you just see a constant wave. There's a success and it's down, a success and it's down. It's cyclical, right? It's when people are ready to buy, they're out of market. They're in, they're out. You never actually see an amplification. You don't see an increase in revenue over time. It's just kind of consistent. The minute you include brand, you start seeing that amplify quite a bit. But we still see everything on that top line, right? Today, most of the spending is on the top line. Most of our measurement is on the top line. We really need to be thinking about the bottom line. These are some of the bigger business problems that we want to start thinking about, the signals that we are starting to evaluate at LinkedIn. Yes, there's short-term sales. There's also long-term sales. The average B2B buying cycle can be anywhere from 6 to 9 months to 2 years. So if you're only giving measurements every quarter, every 6 months, you're not going to get to the actual so what from what your campaign was. You're not going to get an increase in your budget for what you're thinking about or going for next year. How do you start thinking about pricing power? We have some studies that show the increase in brand and mental availability, you're able to increase the pricing for your product because there's more demand for it. Category optionality, talent acquisition, these are all things that are having bigger business impact than just impressions, share of voice, click-through rate, and things that we usually look at that short-term evaluation. Dwell time. So dwell time is something that we've been developing for a while now. We've been playing with how do we take mental availability and how do we bring it to life? How do we start showing what this could look like and how we can make sure that we can adjust on it? So dwell time is essentially it's our attention metric. It's really thinking how much time people are spending. When we took a look at the top 20% of ads, they get 3 times the amount of attention as the bottom 20%. So high performing content takes over. High creative, things that keep people's attention, are gonna take over the market compared to the really poor content out there that people just click through. So we've all seen slides like this that don't normally look like that, but it's like that impression versus engagement slide that we've been talking about for a couple years, noise kind of versus what people are really caring about. What we started doing is with dwell time. And you'll see, for example, at the bottom right, you have these big topics. That's what a lot of companies are focusing on. A lot of impressions, a lot of eyeballs getting to it. Very, very low dwell time. Those are not driving leads. They're not driving conversations. They're not driving purchase. The ones on the left are smaller. They're nuanced. They're not the topic that they're really focusing on and creating a lot of content around. So we started pushing them to think, you know what, the customer experience is probably somewhere in the middle of this. Those ones on the left are probably precursors to what's coming. Do you have a product for that? Do you have a message for that? Do you have content for that? Because this is what people are digging into. This is where they're spending time. This is where you're going to make an impact. A researcher, Nelson Field, did an analysis for eye tracking. And it clearly proves that the longer someone spends with something, you see an increase in not only their attention level, but ROI. Revenue started increasing. So as they were doing this eye tracking exercise, longer attention led to a bigger impact. Within LinkedIn, we do quite a bit of brand lift studies. So we started looking at how is brand lift impacted by the average dwell time? So you can see for those that had a 0 to 1 second dwell time compared to those that had a 9 to 11% dwell time, you see that increase in brand lift. And this is just initial. We're starting to dig into this more and more. A lot of this has been in beta and things that we're in the process of building out quite a bit more and indexing. So I'm excited to think about, how do we develop strategies focused on maintaining attention? When right now, most of us work at companies or agencies where it's like a machine, just spitting out content, right, real quick. Take a minute. Is it high quality? Is it going to hold attention? Is it something that we really want to be focusing on? So this is going to feel like a hard pivot, but I promise it's not. So as we're thinking about, if you think about kind of today, our theme, we had insights, we had some innovation, there's implementation. How many people here have heard of marketing sales orchestration? What about sales and marketing alignment? Right? Okay. It's basically the same thing, just slightly less fancy. We use orchestration because it sounds a little fancier. But I have been in quite a few conversations over the past year with CXO, CMO, CFO, CTO, and this is coming up a lot. Why? They are recognizing they are sitting on a treasure trove of data and information, and they're not using it efficiently. They recognize that their sales teams are spending more time than they have in the past without getting as many qualified leads, not getting as good leads coming in. They're not turning as fast. You have marketing that's kind of creating on their own. You have comms, who's also focused on brand, but they're not really talking. And so there's being a miss. There's something that's really not coming through. So if this is what's important, they started recognizing they need to be thinking about all the signals that they have at their fingertips. So we started saying, you know what, as LinkedIn, we're kind of uniquely positioned to help with this. I'm part of LinkedIn Marketing, LMS. We have a LinkedIn Sales division, and that's with Sales Navigator, which essentially is a CRM tool that you can use online, right? A lot of sales teams use it. So we have this ability to actually see of the people, us, customers, consumers, who have seen marketing content, how many of them have actually been also contacted by sales? Or if they have been contacted by sales content that they've created, have they also seen and been primed by marketing? So we're realizing we have these signals that we can start pulling together. We can start telling intent a little differently. And we started trying to think through what are the biggest issues when it comes to marketing and sales orchestration. One, difficulty in alignment. I think we can all agree to this. I know I've talked about it before. I know I've heard people in this room. Silos. Internal silos are one of the biggest dangers to the future of all of us, all of our jobs. How hard is it sometimes for us to still get web data from people or search data? Or if we know there's a survey going on internally that they don't want you to touch the questionnaire, but it'd be really helpful if you could touch that questionnaire. Or how many times would it be great if you could have spoken to sales? Lack of account focus. So MSO really requires marketing sales to think about a targeted population of highly profitable accounts. They can't agree on who those profitable accounts or who that target audience is. They have different thoughts on who that is. Limited data and insights, we already spoke about this. Everyone has a ton of data, no one has insights. Resource constraints, I think we all feel this, whether it's budget, technology, ways to bring this all together. And then measurement and optimization. So the effectiveness of MSO, the proof that really tells that this is going to bring ROI. They all know it. We all have this feeling. We all agree. We all get a lot of head nods, but we're not sure what to do with it. So we started digging. And as we started auditing and taking a look at our data, we started seeing that marketing sales expense is lower for companies with a higher audience overlap, meaning the audience that has seen both marketing and sales content. When tightly aligned marketing and generated revenue increases, when tightly aligned marketing generated revenue increases by 208%. When you are aligned, it delivers a 36% higher customer retention rate. So again, these are bigger business problems. This isn't just, isn't this cool? We have some cool data. We have generated revenue, we have customer retention. We also have acquisition, so new customers coming in, thinking about those future customers, that future cash flow that we know is critical to CFOs and thinking about the business over time. So organizations that prioritize sales and marketing alignment are nearly 3 times more likely to exceed customer acquisition targets. So again, we're all agreeing. We started looking at the data. Great, what does this mean for me? And this is where that signals conversation, it's something I want all of us to be thinking about more, is what signals do I have at my fingertips to start answering these questions differently and to start to tie to impact? If Forrester released a study that 7 out of 10 buyers reach vendor selection after a digital-only journey, we're all probably nodding and be like, we know this. But why is this critical? In the past, I've even said things like, our job is to get the person to sales. It's sales' job to convert them, right? We think we've all said this. That's not happening anymore. We're converting them. 7 out of 10 people are converting before they even talk to sales, before they interact with anything from sales. They're using it through their digital content. And on average, these people are reaching out to 13 different pieces of content. So that could be a video, that could be something on LinkedIn, that could be a long-form content, that could be something on your website. If that's not aligned, if they're getting different messages for every piece of content that they're going to, how many of those 7 out of 10 buyers are going to choose you from their consideration list? It's something that we all need to be continuously thinking about as we go in, because there is data from each of these to help bring this to life. We're just not using it, and we're not thinking of the way to connect those dots. So we're in the process of testing and creating a beta around this. And we've done quite a few analyses for customers. Some of the top performing customers, the ones who are very efficient, have a very good kind of scale path to purchase that we're seeing, about 50 to 60% overlap for them. However, when we did an audit of a majority of our customers, this number was at 4 to 6%, right? So no one is doing this well. There's a few that are kind of doing it well, but majority at 4 to 6% alignment. And this is creating a lot of inefficiency. It's creating bigger business problems for companies. We're seeing some of our customers and marketing budgets being cut because they know there's inefficiency and no one's figuring it out. So what can we be doing for that? So what we started thinking through are what signals can we show. Now, I would have loved to show you the scorecard that's in beta. I am not allowed to, but I can tell you the categories. So what we started playing with, as we're looking at signals, we started seeing a few things really come through that were really tied to impact. So some of these are, for example, 1, connect. What do I mean by that? Because of the data that we have access to, that economic graph I showed you, I can see within an organization how many people with marketing titles are connected to how many people with sales titles. And what was really interesting is we have found a benchmark, pretty much. If that number is above, we see more impact, we see more revenue increase compared to if that number is below. That's simple, just connecting people internally, finding ways to find the two teams to get to know each other and have conversations. It is a signal of intent, it is a signal of impact. We started looking at things under the align bucket. So this is, again, that number of accounts reached with marketing, a number of accounts reached with sales. Engage. There's quite a few metrics in here that we're still playing around with. One of them is dwell time. A lot of them are tied to that 95-5 kind of theory and document to the mental availability. How can we be showing this over time? So we're playing with multiple metrics in here and benchmarks that will be part of the scorecard. So we can actively tell people, hey, this is below, you're under indexed, this is an area to focus on. Sell. This is very sales focused. This is, are they people actually using Sales Navigator or their CRM tool? What is the utilization of that? What's really sad is these companies are spending millions of dollars on tools that nobody's using. We're able to kind of see that and start making that proof point. And then measure response effectiveness. So what is working best, whether it's an in-mail, whether it's a direct contact, whether it's a phone call, whatever that might be. So we're through each of these coming up with benchmarks based on the signals that we have access to in our economic graph to tell a true story. So it's not just that point that I had earlier, which, oops. Can I go back? Sorry, people after me. So it's not just these numbers, which are really important. Because these, yeah, we all get this. This is cool, but what do I do with it? How do I start creating signals that bring this to life for me? To have those bigger business problem conversations is really asking ourselves, what is driving it? So we've been doing quite a bit of analysis, looking at correlations, looking at what really leads to it, and we're working on this, so you should hopefully see it relatively soon, a scorecard that's going to be coming out. So at the end of the day, To truly get a seat at the table, we have to think about all of the signals. We are still too focused on our own world, the easy to get metrics, the things that we can get to like every day. We need to understand mental availability is the key to lasting impact. If people don't remember you, they're not going to put you on their consideration list. We have to make sure that we are top of mind. Attention creates mental availability and directly impacts consideration and sales. And MSO is top of mind and critical for future success. So I know I focused a lot on marketing and sales. What I love, I was at Ketchum before I went to LinkedIn. And when I started at LinkedIn, I was like, how did I not know about half this research? I would have used it in every single pitch I was in, right? So if I say marketing, substitute that with communications. It's the same problems that we're all dealing with. We're seeing a shift of CCOs, CROs, CMOs coming in and out, kind of interchanging. This is something, this orchestration conversation is just going to continue to grow, and I think it's something that needs to be top of mind for all of us. So, thank you.
Being here. We have time for one question. Great. Robert, I'm going to give you the luxury of the question because I think you've made one of the longest journeys, so.
Okay, I got it.
Nope, you got a microphone right behind you, very civilized.
A little awareness. Yeah, I just wanted it to roll back into that dwell time attention and get your thoughts about, I've seen some research that talked about when people start to message and tell a story in B2B,
Yes.
It tends to get very rational, right? Because there's so much, you have so much
Yes.
data about your business. But the research was saying that it's actually more important to connect on an emotional level, even versus consumers, because the stakes are so high. So I'm wondering, in your research, are you seeing that as a driver of dwell time and attention?
I think the art and science of brand, which I flag up here, which is one of our research topics, basically explains all of that. But yes, we are seeing there is more important to hit more people with an emotional, creative message than a smaller group multiple times with very rational messages. It is more that creative is what we're seeing is driving that longer impact. The emotion is what's driving it. And we actually have quite a few scientific studies through partners that are really pulling that through. So yes, completely agree. And it is something we're seeing. It's part of what we're starting to think through the CMO scorecard 2.0, 3.0, and even some of the orchestration is trying to, how can we get the signal for something that is truly creative or emotional compared to not without manual tagging. And so we're in the process of thinking through a lot of that through some algorithms and things there too.
Thanks.
Great, thank you for the great question, Robert. And thank you again, Nicole. How about another round of applause for her? What a great session.